welcome to a podcast of the Haight-Ashbury Literary Journal. Today's guest is John Curl. Welcome, John.
Oh, thank you, Cesar. I'm very glad to be here today, and thank you so much for inviting me.
So your bio is pretty impressive, and I'm going to read it right now. John Curl is the author of 12 books of poetry and has a new collection, Rainbow Weather, coming out in late 2022 from Vagabond Press. His translations of ancient Inca, Maya, and Aztec poets are collected in Ancient American Poets, published by Bilingual Press. He is the author of Indigenous Peoples Day, a documentary history and memoir of how the new holiday replaced Columbus Day. He represented the USA at the World Poetry Festival in Venezuela in 2010, and he is a member of the Revolutionary Poets Brigade of San Francisco and co-editor of their annual anthology. So, John, I understand you've got some ancient Mayan poems to share with us.
Yes, I do. Today I'm going to read some of the very earliest recorded poems in the Mayan language. And they come from Yucatan, Mexico, and they were collected in a book known as The Songs of Zipbalche in the early 1700s by a man named Abam, or Mr. Jaguar. Abam tells us that these poems have been handed down to him from before the Spanish conquest. The title page reads, "The Book of the Dances of the Ancients," that it was the custom to perform here in the towns when the whites had not yet arrived. I translated a number of the poems and included them in my book, Ancient American Poets, published by Bilingual Press, which also includes poetry by ancient Aztec and Inca poets. And this is actually where I in Yucatan in the early 1980s, I just came across this book. This is the first translation by the man who discovered this book, and this is like a classic in that world. So there are about 20 different poems in that book, or more than 20. I don't remember the exact number, but I'm going to read two of them. Oh, the first one is called, and I'll read it first in Mayan, Yucatec Mayan, and then I'll read my translation into English. Those Who Build Houses and Temples by Abam. Wapacha'ob, Yetel, Putza'ob. Sulam Kabet, Upizil, Ujokil, Wahai Pel Hab, Wakatum, Kimanek, Leu, Kinil Waite, Kaho, Baleil, Hanukuchak Winkob, Laitiob, Lis Upakeil, Uuchben Kaho'ob, Lail Kutalsik, to White Kaho'ob Sik, Utanil Bal Lail Kiik, Hilabash Kolema, Tumen Sasamal Kiilik, Chumokan Uchik Kulil Bash Alon Toon, Tumen Huuchben Winkoob, Why Ikahale, Why Tolume, Tikzik Uhahil Ko'o, Utial, Kapatak Shotkik, Uba Yantich, Lai Kan Yoko, Akab Bekchum, Tuchumak Bay, Watun Chimil, Tankansa. And the English, it's those who build houses and temples. Essential to count the hob years or cartoons that have passed since the great powerful men raised the walls of the ancient cities that we now see here in the province of the Plains. All these cities scattered on the earth, here and there on high hills. Here in the cities, we try to give meaning to what we see today in the skies and what we know. For day to day, at midday, we see in the skies the signs told to us by the ancient people of this land, the ancient people of these villages here on our earth. Let us purify our hearts so at nightfall and at midnight, from horizon to zenith, we may read the face of the sky. And all of these, a lot of these are prophetic poems, and there are other things in it also, but a number of these are prophetic poems, and this is, these are the poems that I'm be reading today. This next one is called Extinguishing the Ancient One on the Mountain, and these refer to ceremonies, ancient ceremonies, which, if you know a little bit about the culture, you may connect with some of this. Extinguishing the Ancient One on the Mountain. Ki'ilis tu'up yokwits. Kaman kintuhal kan tachikin. Tunku hu yetel zakatan. Tit hops ukaluuch. Shiich tun tulakal pash tut tazahal ok. Su hopo Yokokin, tu hal nakan, tu tibi tal uhopal, laishapam, yum kan, kamik kabutz, kak utial, uchil, tukuyich yum kin, konesh, kon takum yashche, kosh, sai kakech, utial tumben hab, Sokil, umanyaya kinil, konesh, umalail, tambail, kahalil, konilakin, utsai, u shokom cheil, kilis kamkak yoko wits, talzeish, tulakal baal tumben, uleesh, tulakal baal hochben, tumen, ukahal, Ulaikin, Ulaik Winal, Ulaik Hab, Ulaik Katum. And in English, extinguishing the Ancient One on the mountain. The sun sinks into the lap of the western sky. The drum beats, the conch trumpets, the singing gourds sound, all the people assemble. The acrobats leap as they arrive at the council house of Lord Serpent, where the chief Holpop and the rain priests await. Along with Lord Akulel and his attendants, the minstrels have arrived, the clowns, dancers, contortionists, jumpers, stoops ones, and spectators. All the people have come to see Lord Serpent and the performance in the plaza. As the sun sinks into the lap of the western sky, it is the moment to begin. Light the copal. Lord Sky receives the smoke and fire with the face of Father Sun. Then let us go to the trunk of the saber tree to make our offerings for the new year. The painful days are gone. We will reunite in the village. We go to the east of the village, to the wooden column of the ancestor, the receiver of the fire on the mountaintop. Bring all things new, throw away all the old. Lord God has granted that the evil days, the last days of the year, which we have passed together here in the village, the evil days have ended, and another day has come, another Winal month, another Ha'ab year, another 20-year Katun. To complete the count of years for the Katun, we will erect a new stone to mark its end at the village gate. We will find a white stone and mark the passing of another cycle.
Very beautiful, John.
Thank you, Cesar.
Reading. couple questions that this first one is, you use the phrase prophetic poem. What is a prophetic poem?
The whole Mayan culture is connected with prophecy, and as it's connected with astronomy and astrology, and it's very complex, but you can't really separate prophecy from Mayan poetry, because it's an intricate part of Mayan culture and Mayan poetry. So what is prophecy? They see things in cycles. As people in our culture have said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And so, they're getting into those rhymes, the rhymes of history. And that's where the prophecies come from. So you can't really predict exactly what's going to happen, but you can see the forces, the natural forces and the human forces at play. And, and people who are very in touch with things can read them. And that's the Mayans, they live by that. That's a very deep part of all of Mayan culture, going back as far back as you can go.
Okay, very interesting. My next question is something I've wondered, and I've asked a few people this question, and I've never really gotten a satisfying answer. And that we know poetry is something that's pretty much universal. It exists in all cultures. However, was there a distinct difference in poetry of indigenous peoples before they were colonized? Was poetry have a different purpose or a different essence than it does now, post-colonization?
Well, sure. It's hard to compare it. You go down, there's a lot of indigenous poets now, and they're, most of them are university trained. They're people who came out of the people. They came out of wherever they came out of, and they went to school, and they studied there's a universal style, which, if you kind of look at the poets, there's an organization which I'm connected with called the World Poetry Movement, of poets from all over the world. And there's a modern international style of poetry, which is, it's flexible and it's different, and people from different cultures work in different ways. But right, the poems, the poetry that Abam was writing in the 1700s, in the early 1700s, came from a very different place and had a very different social social function than the poetry that is today. Although it is connected, like down in Yucatan, as in a lot of places, a lot of small towns in Mexico and Latin America. Every town has a little in the center of the town has a little stage, and on the weekend people get out there. They read their poetry. They do like I've seen like rappers, local rappers and local poets, coming just on Saturday, Sunday afternoon, and they do these cultural presentations. It's not for tourists because there's no tourists there. It's just for the local people. So it does have, it is really part of a lot of people's local lives still, but it is affected by by modern society. None of these people are, a lot of people in our society kind of look at Native people and they have kind of romantic ideas about who they are. But, we're all living in a very modern world. All these kids, they have a little smartphone, just like anybody else. They want to be part of the modern world, but yet they're bringing this culture with it. So they have a very unique, I say, when they go to school, they studied, they probably study Spanish or Mexican poetry in Yucatan and Yucatecan poetry. But, they're, and that has its own. That's a lot of that is coming from European roots. So it's like a mixture. There's like a world culture is a mixture, and in Yucatan, and the Mayan people have a very unique mixture and a very, very strong culture. So it's like they've been one of these groups who've been able to keep their culture together for hundreds and hundreds of years because they've got some very powerful things at the center of them.
Okay, this last poem that you read, it describes a ceremony, but is the poem itself the ceremony, or is it describing the ceremony?
Oh, well, we don't totally know exactly, how they were used. There's just the information that's in the poem. You're putting your finger on a complex question, exactly how they use the poem. Like in the 1700s or before the 1700s, how that was related to with the custom or with the ceremony. But not far away, the Aztec poets were not very different. I mean, they were a little different from the Mayan poets, but the Aztec poets used to get together just like poets do here with a theme. They would call it the dialogue of the songs. The Aztec poets would get together on a regular basis, and and they would play with drums. So it wasn't only like the same with Abam, like it's most likely it wasn't just spoken, but there were drums accompanying it. But poets have always had a kind of dialogues, the dialogue of the poems. So, but we can't really go back there. We only have this is archaeological discoveries. So what you get is you get the footprint in the mud, and then you have to kind of you see the dinosaurs walking across this mud a million years ago, but you kind of recreate what you think was there, but it's complicated.
All right. Fascinating. So, John, I understand you're going to fast forward us into the present. You've got another poem in the same language,
yes,
but written not 500 years ago.
No, this was written very, very recent. This is a contemporary one, which I found in an anthology published in these little towns in Mexico. There are literary journals, just like any place else, and you can find some of them online. But this is like a poem published in a Mayan literary journal for other Mayan people, and this is called Night Voices, and that's in English. It's by a poet named Gregorio Manuel Vasquez Canche, and he is a contemporary Mayan poet living in Quintana Roo today, and. By the way, I studied Yucatec Mayan at a language school called Naatik, which means to understand. You can, if you're interested, you can, they have a school. It's in Felipe Carrillo Puerto, which is also known as Chan Santa Cruz. Which, if you know it, the Chan Santa Cruz was the capital. They had an independent state for about 50 years in the 19th century, and Chan Santa Cruz was the capital of it in Quintana Roo. So it's like it's very powerful area for Mayan culture. So this is Night Voices, Akab Ta'ana'ob by Gregorio Manuel Vasquez Canche. Akab Ta'ana'ob, Tilakin Talye Le Yahilob, Takal Tichawa Kakab, Ti Mozono'ob, Yetel Ko Kina'ob, Ulo Mayab, Ku Tzitz-Kinsko-ob, Ach, Wala-ob Kin, Yetel Tumbin Kak, Sud Tanyapam Tukula-ob, Yalabika-ob, Ye Bashala-ob, Kushtal, Achtsa, Ka-ob, Tutus, Ukim-la-ob, Chumaklu Ku Paka'ob, Ukina Kusha Antan, Uka Sa Suti, Kach Saha'ob, Ta'ana'ob, Kunsaik, Ta'on Halkabil, Inetbil Yashche, Ti Amotso'ob, Kukankich, Kusha Antan, ti akuko'ob ku shi tlachal kusha'an sib ti aicho'ob kusha'an su'um kukushta ta kin ilo'ob kusha'an kakinil. And in the English language, it's night voices. From the east came pain through the long night, accomplice of whirlpools and crazy times that wither the flower of the Maya land. Sons of the sun and the new fire, ideas turned into copal ashes, agonies that play with life, sages who outwitted death, spirits that travel trails wet with tears and sweat, tracing the footprints of pain of bare and tired feet. In the hidden villages they wait, the rebellion of the nocturnal writings, the rebellion of the hidden voices in cenotes, caves and hills. In the center of the earth, they wait. The power of the word lives. Its return into memories, words that will give us freedom. Mutilated saber tree of mine, in your roots sprouts the living word. In your shoots flourish the living script. In your fruits, the rope of life lives. In your times lives our time. So that was, you can see the the prophetic aspect of both the ancient and contemporary Mayan poetry.
Yes, he's really bringing it together, the past and the present. In your times lives our times, our time.
It's the same cycle, the Mayan cycle of time, the way they kind of view reality. See, and then they do it astrologically, because then you kind of figure out where, where are we in this cycle, and then how do we deal with difficult things, and that's their involvement. And poetry is part of their culture.
Yes, it's a beautiful and a powerful poem. Are you in touch with this poet?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, in touch with him.
We got to get him to do a feature at Sacred Grounds.
I don't know if he has Zoom. If he has email. He has email, but I don't know if he has Zoom. I'm kind of dubious, but maybe he does.
Okay, well, thank you, John. This has been really a delight hearing you read these poems and talk about them. I think we have enough time if you'd like to read one of your own poems.
Okay, no, I'd love to. And so I chose one which I thought would fit with this. And this is a poem that actually I was invited to read. I was invited to write a poem. This is a tarot deck, contemporary tarot deck organized by a nomadic press and Arias. And so they asked me to write a poem about one of the cards, and that's the Knight of Pentacles. So this is my poem of the Knight of Pentacles. The key is learning the craft, the discipline, the creative power in objects and words. Reading the golden talisman in your hand as you rest briefly along the dusty trail, overlooking the gardens of toil. The rider on the crest of the hill contemplates the long road, watching both sun and rain in the distance, searching the horizon. Open the grimoire to the dog-eared page, understanding the power of the symbol and the fragility of it all is to change your mind, to transform the world. The art of the soil brings knowledge and maturity. Till the earth, mulch and water deeply the length and breadth of your small plot. Stand your ground when you need to. Seeds will sprout and grow with the sweat of your brow.
I'm sensing a theme here of regeneration, perhaps revolution.
Absolutely.
In your work and in the works that you're translating.
Yes, that's what attracts me. It's very, very renewal. It's kind of using a worldview to the world keeps renewing itself. And we as poets and as creative people, we play a role in that. And we transform all kinds of difficult things, difficult words, and painful experiences, and all the negative things in the world. We find ways to transform that energy, those negative energies, into positive energies, and make it into something beautiful and useful.
Well, I think that's a wonderful point to end on, John. So thank you very much for dropping by the podcast of the Haight-Ashbury Literary Journal.
Thank you so much, Cesar, for having me.
And this is the Haight-Ashbury Literary Journal, signing off. Till next time.